Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. We are coming to you, me, Tony Gerdeman, also along with Tom Orr, are coming to you live from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, where we have just gotten done watching a snippet of practice. We talked to Ryan Day, talked to a handful of players. Tom, I need an update on the quarterbacks.
The update on the quarterbacks today, it's very substantive. It's that nothing has changed, and they were very far away from us. Back to you.
I need a little bit more.
They were very, very far away from us. I believe we talked about this in the past, but just the practice field at Ohio State, there are several fields. There's one grass and two turf, I think, and the media is all behind one end zone, and the quarterbacks, they have the different position groups in different but consistent spots throughout the field every time. So every time, the offensive linemen and the defensive linemen are practicing right in front of us. So we always get great pictures of the offensive line. Defensive line have no trouble telling who's repping with which, with which units, all of that. The quarterbacks, on the other hand, they're not quite on the other side of the shot, but they're pretty close. They are at the furthest point in the field, sometimes one field over from where we can see. So the insight we have into the quarterbacks is not great, and there wasn't a whole lot of detail provided by Ryan Day during the post-practice interviews either.
Now, looking for insight would be like sitting in south stands and trying to decipher what's going on in block O and north stands.
Yeah.
And then you'd be like, hey, who's the best yeller? Who's the best person in block O? You're like, well, so we don't really know too much about. And Ryan Day said, we're not really looking for a time frame. He said in the past that after a couple of weeks they want to know, but they'll look at the tape closer after the first scrimmage, which is, I think they scrimmage every Saturday, and so they'll look after the first scrimmage. I think he said we'll come up for air and look at the quarterbacks, do that after Saturday, then do it the following week and see if there is a gap, and that will generally determine where they go from there. He did say it was a good practice, so that's a positive. You don't want any bad practices on day one. Although really, all you're looking for at this point is effort, and you don't have a bunch of bumbling Keystone cops out there, like defensive line trying to practice with the offensive line. Be like, what are you?
What did Urban Meyer call the wide receivers in 2012? A clown show?
Yes.
There was apparently no clown show out on the field with any units. So you know what? As far as these things go, that's about as good as you can get for your first practice.
Yeah, there's no circus music. In fact, was there any music at all?
There was. Okay. There was music, because several times I thought, I'm going to have to start Shazamming these songs so I know what the teens are listening to now.
Yes, you're right. So Ryan Day talked to us for, 20 minutes and got a barrage of questions. Really, day one, there's not a lot. My practice report was, here's the guys who were hurt. Like Jamison Williams was jogging around the practice field, so I don't know that he practiced today. Like I said, we got to watch 30 minutes of it, and the first 15 minutes of that was pre-practice stretching. The final 15 minutes of that was mostly punt and some offensive line and defensive line drills. And like Tom said, the quarterbacks were a million miles away. We'll know more after we see the entire practice on Tuesday.
Yes.
We'll be able to talk about more. Today it was just, Jamison Williams, like I said, he was banged up. Justin Hilliard, Cameron Babb, Ronnie Hickman were off doing their own thing. Thayer Munford was back practicing. DeMario McCall, I think that was my lead with the practice report, as he's back, was working at running back, working at punt return. And it's the first time we've seen him out there. I mean, he was out there a little bit in the spring, but we didn't really see him doing anything. And today we actually got to see him do some stuff.
Right. This was very much a proof of life practice, where we don't have anything real substantive that we can say, but we can report that Ohio State does, in fact, plan to field the football team in 2019. And as far as beyond that, Thayer Munford was out there. That was one of those, just check that box, because that was in the spring. He didn't practice at all. We did not see him out there for one snap. We had not seen him out there since the Big Ten championship game. And so that was in the spring. We talked about that being like one of the huge unanswered questions for this year. That you've at least started to get the answer. They were not kidding. He really is back out there. That was not just happy talk. So that's that's a big piece of good news for this team. Demario McCall being out there, again, he has been hampered by injuries just his whole career, and when he's on the field, he's explosive. We didn't really get to see him all spring. And so, again, he was out there today. That's another little piece of good news for them. If you hear motors of cars going around, they have gators that they drive around inside the Woody Hayes to haul equipment around, and so every once in a while one of those goes zipping by. So if you hear a motor noise, that's what it is. That's not a motorcycle or anything.
And sometimes if you hear players walking by carrying beds, it's because there are. Did you see the line of beds in the WAC?
Yes.
When we got the tour of the new facilities,
yes.
There's dozens of inflatable beds, mattresses just lined up for the players who will take them anywhere they can and get some rest and lay them down in the facilities, lay them down in the lobby, lay them down wherever, and just try to get some rest. Although it's easier now with no two-a-days.
No two-a-days, I'm sure, makes life a lot more pleasant. Although they had the schedule for today up on one of the TVs inside, and it was quite a schedule. The freshmen wake up was at 6 a.m., freshmen in the building at 6:30 a.m., varsity in the building 7 o'clock a.m., breakfast and tape 6:30 to 8 o'clock, freshman kicking starts at 7 o'clock, and then
they shouldn't kick freshmen.
You go all the way. Yeah, exactly. This is just meetings, so I guess they're just meetings about kicking the freshmen.
Well, you can do that.
And practice starts 6:45 or 9:45, lunch at noon, and then more meetings, team making meetings, dinner, kicking walkthrough, offensive, defensive meetings, and then 8:30 p.m. snack to go. So it is. They're not doing two-a-days, so they're not outside, but this is the busy season. This is Santa's workshop during December. That is a college football facility during August.
Well, and Ryan Day, when we were talking about the facilities, he said they don't want the players anywhere else. Pretty much, they want them here as long as possible and as much as possible. And so when you give them a snack to go at 8:30, they don't even want the guys going to like B-dubs on the way home, or you don't even swing by Cane's. You just take this and go straight home, go do nothing else, and then be back in the morning. You mentioned proof of life. I was thinking like DeMario needs to have a newspaper with today's date on it. Mm-hmm. Like this, I was practicing here today and I am alive, and that's good. We talked to Malik Harrison, Damon Arnett, J.K. Dobbins,
Jeff Okudah,
and Chase Young
Austin
as well,
Mack.
And Austin Mack. Maybe one of the most interesting things is J.K. Dobbins, who talked about not being happy with last year, and it was a disappointment personally and with the team, and he feels like this year is a national championship caliber team, and one of the reasons why, Tom, was
he called. Was it the first thing he said when they asked why he?
I don't know if it was the first thing.
He was asked after the Rose Bowl. The reporters had heard him talking on the field about the fact that this was basically a national championship or bust, was kind of the shorthand version of what he said. And they said, so why do you feel like that? And one of the first things he said was, new defensive coaches. And it was one of those, like, I don't think you meant it to sound like it sounded, but like there was I think that was the only time you had like a noticeable laugh from a number of reporters. Like you probably didn't mean that to be a particularly cutting remark, but
right.
You could certainly read it that way,
because you could see it being like, well, these are all the things that are different. We're working harder, we're doing this, we're working smarter. I like this, and new defensive coaches, as opposed to like when you say new defensive coaches, it is one of the reasons why you can win a national championship this year. It says one of the reasons you could not last year was because of the old defensive coaches.
Hashtag facts only.
I mean, he's not saying anything that nobody else is saying.
Yeah, he didn't say it, and I don't want to put words in his mouth. That was a lot of I think there was a little bit of reading between the lines, but you didn't have to read that far between the lines. The other thing that he said that I thought was interesting was he used the word failure, straight up failure, to describe his 2018 season. And people said, really? Like failure? Like you rushed for 1,000 yards? And he said, yes, failure. That is a pretty strong word, I think. Sorry, we have someone bothering us. I don't know. Fans, the worst. Failure is a very strong word for someone who rushed for 1,000 yards. But you look at his yards per carry; they were down last year. And they said, is it like not just the numbers, but just how it looks? And he said, yeah. And you could tell, like, how it looked last year was not how it looked in 2017.
No.
And he has, I mean, this is potentially a contract year for him. He could turn pro after this year. He sure sounds like he's taken it very seriously. He said his body fat is down 4%, so from 12% to 8%. He was never anyone you would really have considered doughy, and he's to be down to 8% body fat.
I think there were some people
serious.
who felt like he had maybe gotten too big.
Yeah, well, he said he's the same weight as he was last year. He's still at 215, but that is, the composition of that 215 pounds is a little different this year.
Yeah, Chase Young had some things to say about. I thought it was interesting. We've talked a lot about how deep the defensive line is, the defensive ends are, could possibly be. A lot of unproven, but there's a lot of them. And he said he thinks they're even deeper on the interior, and it's hard to argue with how many nose tackles they have. When Tommy Togi has you number 3, as we've talked about earlier in the week, he's also it's. You're going to be running more north-south, more attacking. He's looking forward to that. I don't think he put a number today on anything. J.K. Dobbins didn't put a number on anything. Like he didn't want to put a number to it. But they're both talking like last year was a disappointment, and this year, what the coaches want, the chips on the shoulder. That's the way they're talking right now.
Yeah, and much like J.K. Dobbins tried to kind of solidify himself, lose a little bit of maybe bad weight, if you want to call it that. Chase Young talked about playing through a couple both ankles, having pretty severe sprains for a decent chunk of last year, trying to take as many steps as he can to rehab, build those up, try and avoid having that issue again this year. Because his goal is, he was pretty blunt about it. He didn't put a number on it, but he said he wants to leave here and be the best. And it was, people asked, okay, how do you measure the best defensive end in Ohio State history? Is it numbers? Is it, and he said you can do it in sacks, you can do it in tackles for loss, you can do it in pressures, you can do it in just disrupting the opposing offense. Like it's not just set the sacks record. There's broader ways to measure that, but that is his goal. He knows the Bosas, he knows Tyquan Lewis and all, Jason Simmons and all the other guys who've come through here that have been star defensive ends. His goal is to have his name at the top of that list at the end of this year.
Yeah, I wanted to ask him if you also measure NFL draft slot, because he said he wasn't talking about the NFL right now, or he didn't want to answer anything about it, basically. Like, it's not anything he's thinking about or not interested in answering. Talking to Damon Arnette, speaking of the NFL, after the Rose Bowl, he was done. He said he was leaving for the NFL, and after the Rose Bowl, he was actually in Dallas looking for an apartment while he trained. And I think he said after the Rose Bowl, Chris Carter, who he's known all of his life, Damon Arnette is a St. Thomas Aquinas kid. Chris Carter has been an assistant coach there forever. He knows everybody around there. But he's known Chris Carter forever, and it was well known. It was known that Damon Arnette was going to leave for the NFL, and Chris Carter tried to stop and talk to him, and Damon Arnette just smiled and kept going because he knew exactly what Chris Carter was going to tell him and say to him, and he didn't want to hear it. Right? He didn't want to hear it. And so then he said he was in Dallas when Chris Carter called him on the phone, got a hold of him, and just read him the riot act, like, what are you doing? You're not an All-American. You're not this. You're not that. You think you are, but you aren't. You need to go back to school. And so that was, Arnett said that he was being told stuff that he knew. And so and then another thing that he was talking about is, when I first got over there, he was talking about Jeff Hafley and the things that he was teaching. And he came back for that as well, because he said, I wouldn't want to be somewhere else and seeing that going on, knowing that I could have had that and I didn't. So he came back for a number of reasons. Obviously, you improve the draft stock, which is what he wants to do. And he's a guy we talked about in the last show about scapegoats. And he talked about the grief he's gotten from fans. And, he said, somebody asked him, do you have to look for that online? Do you have to look for it? He's like, you don't have to look hard for it. He mentioned somebody DM'd him and said that he needs to go back to high school. But he's a guy that Jeff Hafley's talked all spring about how well he was doing and how hard he was playing. And Arnett said he had to calm down off the field, and that's what he's done. He's more staying home watching Netflix, he said. And so, everything we've heard about him from others, and now everything we've heard from him, which is, take what you want of it. Mm-hmm. But he seems like he's definitely a more mature player, has come to the realization that, this is his last chance to make the mark that you are supposed to as an Ohio State cornerback. And he knew last year he fell short of that.
Yeah, and he can be, he is somewhere between where he wants to be and where I think a decent chunk of the Ohio State fan base actually thinks he is. He is already a perfectly serviceable Big Ten cornerback. Yeah. That is not the standard at Ohio State. But there are people that think he belongs in the Mack, and he doesn't. He is well above that level, and he has a chance this year. He's probably not. If you were going to pick one corner off of this team that was going to go in the first round next year, that's probably going to be Jeff Okudah. But Damon Arnett has a chance to earn himself some money and get drafted at some point next year and make an NFL roster and have the start of a decent NFL career. That starts now. And you heard a lot of the guys, none of the underclassmen wanted to talk about, someone asked Chase Young, so, this is your last year, and no, he didn't obviously want to talk about that. And J.K. Dobbins, I don't think anyone even bothered asking because you're not going to get an answer. But for those guys, for Damon Arnett, this is your pro career starts now. Because you get a year of good film now. You have a year of showing maturity, showing improvement, showing coachability, all of that stuff. Then that leads you into combine season and camp, all the Senior Bowl and all that stuff. But it starts now because you want to have good film your last year, going into that Senior Bowl, going into combine, all of that jazz. So, and I think everyone is pretty keenly aware of the stakes on this. And however much Ohio State football and Damon Arnett's play means to you personally as a Buckeye fan, it means a lot more to Damon Arnett and Damon Arnett's family. So rest assured, I think Damon Arnett is taking this season pretty seriously.
Yeah, it was funny that somebody asked him, well, what do you think of when fans are giving you grief? He's like, well, they weren't all wrong. It wasn't all incorrect, but there were some things that he'd get ripped on that wasn't the quarterback's responsibility. Like if they're covered and the guy still makes the catch, credit the receiver for that. And he did say, like, looking back for the ball, he was like, why the hell aren't we looking back for the ball? Stuff like that. So we've got the video. There's video of it on NeoZone's front page from Facebook Live. Watch it. I think you will get a better appreciation for a player that I think a lot of Buckeye fans need to give a second chance to, or a third chance, and see what you think of that. Tom, was there anything else from the players before we get to the new facilities?
I don't think there was anything else big there. I just was scrolling through Twitter to see if I'd tweeted anything from earlier. One thing Ryan Day said was Gunnar Hoke, the backup quarterback, has picked up the offense quickly. Day's quote was, quote, I was impressed. Yeah. So, and he used the word impressed or impressive several times.
So there's definitely a positive to the day was how well Brady Hoke, that's one.
Boy, put a dollar in the jar on that one.
But impressed by quarterback Hoke on his play and how quickly he's picked everything up. The facilities here at the WAC, they added like an entire floor, second story, to a portion of the new area. $7 million in renovations. You can look out from the players. There's a players' lounge. People are staring at us right now that you can see from the field. Behind them there's a buffet. There's a chef station with an actual chef. There's a pizza oven, like a stone brick pizza oven. There's a pool table. There's video games. There's all kinds of recovery equipment, televisions. There's a movie theater upstairs.
Barbershop. Half-court basketball court.
Yeah, you walk into the basketball court, staring at it right now, like, it's awesome. And I thinking about it, like when I was in college, to have all of that stuff. Granted, we're bad examples because the drinking aspect, but there's just so much stuff here. Why go home?
Well, we talked earlier about the schedule for the day, and it started. The freshmen were supposed to be at the WAC at 6:30 in the morning, and you're going home with your brown bag snack at 8:30 at night.
Yeah.
So that's 14 hours. So if you're going to be here and you want the players to be here and you want them to focus on this, you make it as appealing a place to be as possible. And guess what? This looked like a pretty fun place to be. Like I'm sure that after you've had, if it's a particularly hot day and you've had practice in the morning and you've been running around and you've been watching film and all that, you may not be in the mood for a half-court basketball game, but there is stuff here that seems like, this would be an appealing place to hang out, and a place that for recruits, you look at this and you're like, this would be a fun place to go to school for 4 years. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I thought was very interesting is they have not one but two enormous displays about the Michigan game. Enormous. I tweeted a couple pictures. One was a big wall display, probably 30 feet long, with TV monitors and photos and pairs of gold pants and game balls and helmets and a countdown clock to the game. 120 days to the game as of Friday, in case you're keeping score at home. And tweeted that out, like a 30-foot long display, and said, this is the second largest display dedicated to the Ohio State-Michigan game inside the WAC. And then the one that's the biggest is like a probably 20-foot tall wall, 15, 20-foot tall wall, again, probably about 30 feet long, just wall-to-wall pictures of Ohio State-Michigan games, video monitors just showing a loop of highlights, again, countdown clock to the
just
game,
the wins.
Helmets. Yeah, I mean,
it's starting to go from color to black and white.
Is there any other kind? There were highlights playing, photos, countdown clock, the whole thing. And the smaller display also had like stories about, here's a plaque about what gold pants are and what they mean. Mm-hmm. Here's a story about Michigan Week, and like a picture of, some of the signs on campus with the M's crossed out. Just kind of, again, if you're a recruit and you're coming here, you want to learn a little bit about it. You want to A, learn about it. You want to B, figure out like, hey, this is kind of a thing here. Like, even if you sort of think like, hey, this is kind of a big deal, I don't think Michigan has an Ohio State display that's that scale, I would guess.
Yeah, I would recommend you guys check that out. That's on the front page as well. There was even because we've not been back there before.
Correct.
We also finally got to see like the mural from the 2012 team. Did you look at that? That was very cool. Where it's just it's all kinds of shots from like iconic shots from that season, all melded together. It's just a really. I could see $7 million being spent there because it's all very, very nice. And Tom, just imagine you come in hot August practice. You've been practicing for 2.5 hours. You've been running, and you could go in and ask the chef for the biggest bowl of fettuccine Alfredo you could possibly want. And I'm sure after you eat that, then you vomit for 6 hours. Then you'll go shoot some pool, maybe do some Pop-A-Shot. And even the reporters walking through, we're doing Pop-A-Shot, doing this. The video games don't require any quarters. You can just get in them. Really, just a really cool setting, and like that schedule you're talking about. The guy's got 20 minutes between things. Well, what are you going to do? I'll go throw up some jumpers. I'll go do this. I'll go grab a snack. I'll go. There's drink stations. It's really like it's impressive, and if you're doing better than that, then congratulations. If you're doing worse than that, then I feel bad for you. But we're all doing worse than that.
Can we go back to finishing a hot practice outside and eating fettuccine Alfredo? That seems like literally the worst thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Like the chef is going to be like, I really do not recommend this. I think this would be a bad idea. Like, no. I'm just feeling like I want some pasta. Well, can we just do something lighter? Maybe how about a string of pasta?
How about a little olive oil instead of cream?
No. I really think I just want some fettuccine Alfredo, and yes, please.
And if you want to really know how the sausage is made, while Gerd was saying that, I went back, found a picture of the 2012 display, and tweeted that out. So you can find that in my Twitter account, and maybe we'll throw that in the...
Where can we follow you at, Tom?
Twitter.com. Of course. Gerd. My username, of course, is at Tom Orr 4.
There you go. It's on the internet. Anything else?
It's on computers. Maybe you've heard of them.
We will be back here Sunday for quarterbacks, Monday for check-in day, hotel check-in day, everybody's favorite day of the year. Then Tuesday is a full practice day that we get to watch all of, which will be nice, and it'll probably be 1,000 degrees.
Yeah, that's the BTN
Yes.
camp visit. So BTN will be here for the entire practice, so that means it's open to us for the entire practice as well. So that'll be good. That'll be a chance to, because the first 3 periods of practice are very good for, like, here's what people are doing, here's what's going on. Hey, this guy's not practicing.
Right.
But there's a lot of that is stretching, a lot of that is punt, and it's not stuff that necessarily is going to tell us a lot about. That was a forklift driving by, in case you're wondering what that was. We're not actually recording live inside a jet engine. The practice on Tuesday, we should have a better sense for, who's repping with the first team offensive line, who's repping with the first team defensive
we'll
line,
have
and that
depth
kind of
charts
stuff.
for you, where we can tell you, like, today Jonah Jackson was the 7th offensive lineman going through reps. If you want to, look into that, but you would not expect him to be at the front of the line just yet. And since I think it's about time to go, because the traffic and construction is getting a little bit louder and more annoying, and plus I think we're done, Tom.
For those many reasons, yes, I think we are done.
Right. Plus I have not had breakfast or lunch yet.
Well, you should probably get on that. Maybe some fettuccine Alfredo.
That sounds really good, but it's really hot here. But it's cooler in there, so you're right. A big plate of fettuccine Alfredo, and then maybe some sprints. Okay?
Sure. Let's make it happen.
I think we got a title for the show. All right. Thank you all for listening. We will talk to you next week. And when we do talk to you next, we'll have a Tuesday practice to talk about. So that'll be good. Have a good one.